Sir. I'm so excited for you all to learn about the amazing work of Logan County. So it's all yours.
Thank you. As you can see on this, I've just kind of given you an idea of where Logan County is in the state of Kentucky. So that red mark there pinpoints our county. I also have access to I gave you a bit.ly to the presentation. There's links in here that are live. So if you decide you want to go to those links, you can have this presentation to do that. I have included my superintendent's name and email on there because I will, after in the end of June, will not be in Logan County anymore. And so you would, if you had any questions or needed anything after July 1, you could reach out to Mr. Mullins and he would be happy to direct you to where you need to go. This tells a little bit about Logan County, just at a glance. We are a very spread out county. You notice it shows down there, it's 120 miles to visit all the schools in one day. So they're very rural in their area and kind of like spread out all across the county. We have 31 students in our district, 5 preschool through 8th grade schools that feed to 1 high school. And then we have our 1 career and tech center. And this is just, again, a little bit more about our county and our districts. So I'm going to take us back to where we started. And that started in 2018 with the superintendent and I, and then Russellville Independent, which is our city schools, and their curriculum person in their district. We got together and we agreed and felt like we needed to reach out to our community members, asking for their guidance and their input on what they felt like our schools or our districts needed to be able to provide students when they go as employees moving into those businesses and into that community. So we held a forum, a luncheon, invited them to eat. That's always a good thing and works very well. So they came and we had a panel of community members who answered some of our questions. And then we had the group identify and prioritize their competencies. So we gave them several competencies that are provided by Ed Leader 21 at the time, the profile of a graduate, and they prioritized those. So they identified their 1 through 10 of the, I think we had 20 of the competencies, and they prioritized them. And then we went through and tallied all those up. And as you can see on the letter that we sent out afterwards, we made our partners, our community members, aware of what they said so that they knew we valued what they were saying and we're going to implement those. Later, we also sent them, once we had the graphic design created, we sent them our profile of success and what that looked like, so they knew what the work was going to be, what the work was going to be like in our district. So this is what we are calling our version 1.0. And this is where I always have to step in and tell people I messed up and made a mistake in this process, and thought that the teachers and these administrators involved in this work wanted us to take care of things. And so the superintendent and myself created this graphic and shared it out with everybody. So we thought that was a great way to take one other thing off of teachers' plates. We began to realize that that wasn't really what needed to happen. We needed the buy-in, we needed their participation. So this was the first one. This was the district created one. But then this is where our LC innovators came into play. I sent out an email inviting teachers and administrators within our district to be a part of the work. I explained what that work was going to look like and what we wanted, what our vision was for it. And I asked for volunteers. Turned out that we had a really great representative group, different age levels, different schools, with that first group. And so that's when we brought in Katie Martin to help us with this work. And she kind of led our innovators group through these areas that you're seeing there, that we wanted our work to kind of dig a little deeper in what the graduate profile was about and what it's going to look like in our district, understanding kind of what our community is wanting with our profile of success, and then kind of that back and forth. We're going to do the work, we're going to talk about it, we're going to do the work, and then we're going to come back together and celebrate that work. And so she helped us to create this kind of profile that has led all of our work since that time. This is another thing that we felt like was very important, because at the time that we started our work with the LC Innovators, there were some teachers who were saying, well, I already have that poster on the wall, or I already have some posters made for our schools. So they were really stressing, which I think we know teachers typically do. They're perfectionists. They want to get it right and they want to keep it that way. And so we were helping them to understand that it's a process, that first version of our profile was just that. It was a first version, and that we need to continually go through this learning process, this cycle, and not ever think, oh, we've arrived. It's what are our next steps? What are we doing well, and what do we want to keep doing, and what do we want to learn about to add to it? So this is very important, and we try on a regular basis to communicate that in our districts to not only our educators, but our parents and our students. Because a lot of times our students are the same way, and they want that A, or they want that perfect paper, and are missing out on the fact that learning is that process. So then this is our version 2.0, and this was created by our LC Innovators team. So our teachers and our administrators who were part of that team helped us to develop this. And then by doing that, had the buy-in and understood the value of it, and were able to communicate the value of that across our district. So then we went through the work of creating those rubrics, those success rubrics of what does it look like in grades 2, 5, 8, and 12. If we say that our students are empowered learners or they're communicators. So how do we define that? What does it look like? And what experiences, what type of instructional strategies need to be in place if we want these experiences to happen? And so we kind of started the process of building those success rubrics. This is one of the slides, which is a link. So when you click on that picture, it will take you directly to our website, which will lead you to these indicators. And as you can see, I just put a snapshot of one of those. So we had this type of rubric for each of our 5 profile of success indicators. And this really helped to give a good solid idea to our teachers about what this looks like in the classroom. I know we hear it often from our teachers who, they're like, well, okay, I get it. That's what it looks like in 3rd grade, but I'm at the high school level. That's not going to apply to me. So this was really a great visual for them to understand what that looks like at the different grade levels, and be able to apply those into their classroom and to their instructional strategies. So the next big learning piece that we did that turned out to be a wonderful experience and a very beneficial learning piece were the learning walks. So we hosted our LC Innovators, and Katie, we organized it to where we divided them up into teams, and they could go into the buildings and they could see it. So what did it look like, and what were they seeing? What success were they having and they were able to recognize that and communicate that. And and was such a great experience that they kept asking for it again. When do we get to do that again? When do we get to do that again? And we were excited that finally, after a couple of years of craziness, that this spring we were able to do that again, and our teachers were able to go out. And the feedback that we got from that, going at the beginning of our work to this part where we are in our work now, is they could see the things that were happening and the work that was being done and how it was translating to student engagement and student achievement. So that was an excellent opportunity for our teachers. If only we could get more of our teachers, the ability to do that and be out in the buildings and seeing other things. So another thing that we did was we created the website. And again, that's a link that you can click and go right to it. We wanted to make sure, because in order to have buy-in, teachers needed to understand, again, what that looked like, and be able to, at a moment's notice, pull something up and go, okay, this is what it's talking about. This is what that means. So we created a website which the teachers can go to each of our profile of success competencies. It's going to have what the indicators are, what the evidence is, and the strategies. And then down below that are some examples of what that would look like in the classroom or in a school setting. There were pictures and some had videos, just so that they could kind of click and go through and see what were some ways that those profile competencies were implemented in the classroom. So once we felt like we were in a good place with our profile of success competencies and of people understanding what those looked like, we had, of course, our pretty posters up everywhere. The competencies, we were trying to work on the language and helping everybody speak the same language. We realized that our next step was kind of that all-encompassing learning model. So if we want our students to be empowered learners or collaborators or communicators, what do our teachers need in order to facilitate that and have it to happen? So that meant what supports did our teachers need? How did we need to help them understand what these competencies mean and what they look like, and how they can successfully use instructional strategies to foster that type of learning? So that kind of is where this came from. Katie, as you can tell, I stole a lot of your stuff. But that really helped our LC Innovators team kind of realize, okay, we want to take it to the next step and look at our adult learners. And so this was some work that our LC Innovators did in one of their meetings of what they wanted to see that our LC learning model represent, and what we wanted to see it focus on. And as you can see right there in the center, the choice, student choice was a big thing, the learner centered and the whole child. And we are still learning what that looks like, what learner centered looks like. I would not dare say that we are already there and are 100% accomplished, but we feel like we have a better idea of what that is and what that can look like. So we created, with the LCC's help, Katie's help, we created a graphic for that. And our LC Innovators team identified these 6 educator competencies. So in order for our students to be able to implement the profile competencies, our teachers needed to be learners in these areas: competency-based, learner-centered community, whole child, learner agency, relevant and authentic, and personalized. So we wanted all of these to tie back to our student competencies and help our teachers understand that. In order to do that, and these links are live, you can click on the educator competencies and self-assessments, and they'll take you to what that work looked like for our district. In order to do that, you see this graphic, the profile of success is in the center. That's our students. That's the main focus. But in order to help students get great at those competencies, teachers need the competencies that you see around the profile. And then how do we support our teachers? That is the larger pieces of, on the outside, the communities of practice, the professional learning, equity and access, and performance assessment. So our teachers need those supports in order to, again, continue to work on that. So what we had them do was we created Google Forms survey. We asked them to kind of rate themselves, self-assess where they felt like they were with each of these educator competencies. And this, we really stressed to them, it was not evaluative. We weren't going to look at it. It was strictly for them. And so they could be able to say, okay, here's my area of next steps, and here's what I need to work on. So we then took those self-assessments, and the teacher and the administrator created their growth plans. Our district worked into, we have our Kentucky framework, which are those teacher standards, but then we also worked into it our profile of success competency. So you can see that at the top, in that top box. We needed the framework. They needed to choose a framework area, but then they also were to choose a profile of success competency. And I just threw in a couple of examples. I had some of our administrators send me these examples just to kind of to go on. And you can see how they've talked about the framework, what they were going to do there, and then also the profile of success competencies and what their learning strategies were going to be for those. This is a little bit out of place. This should have gone first, sorry. This is the educator self-assessment. This just kind of gives you a snapshot of what that looks like. The principals had access to those. You can see it says 31 responses. Each school principal had access to them. And that was really so that they could help provide personalized support for their teachers. So they could look and see which teacher felt like they needed work on personalization, and kind of help gear some of their adult learning and towards whatever those competencies were they felt like they needed to work on. Along the same line and about the same time, we were so excited this year to be able to, we had talked about it and gotten it started before COVID of doing our profile, our defenses of learning, and had to put those on hold. So this was our first year kind of back in gear and really hitting the ground running with our profile of success work. So we were able to, for grades 5, 8, and 12, they were all of our students, 100% of them successfully completed a profile defense of learning. And I've just given you some pictures to kind of show you some examples. We did a video, we took a video of every one of these students as they were giving their defense. And we've got them in a Google Drive so that we can go back and look at them, or the students can go back and utilize them as evidence in their portfolios, which they're building an electronic portfolio connected to the competencies. And then they were able to take those pieces of evidence and utilize them to build their defensive learning. In the top corner there, the profile of success defense examples, we have 2 amazing digital learning coaches who have been wonderful and amazing in this process. They created this site for teachers and for students to be able to utilize as a resource of what are the guidelines, what are the overarching things we're looking for, some rubrics, some examples of some templates that can be utilized. And I will tell you, I was a little afraid when I saw the templates. I was a little worried that, they were just, everybody's was going to look the same. But the students from grades 3 up took these templates and made it their own. And you can see the personalization in their profile. I mean, in their, I've gone blank, in their presentations. You can see the child's personality there. And so that's what we loved seeing, was that everybody's looked different. There was no 2 presentations that were the same. And so it was great that the students took ownership of it and enjoyed this process. So then the other thing that we wanted to implement were the communities of practice. And once again, here is where my digital learning coaches were an amazing help. From the assessment results, we did a survey asking them to pick what focus they chose for their PGP. And then as you can see, we created groups. We wanted to try to keep the groups in a small enough number that people felt comfortable and could talk. So we created these different groups based upon their educator competencies for those community of practice opportunities. And this just kind of shows some of the work that we did the first time that they met. And again, we were only able to implement this year, starting in the spring. Our goal next year will be to hit the ground running in the fall, right in August, so that we can give them more opportunity and more time to work with their groups on these competencies. So this one was relevant and authentic, and the member's name was there. And then from a list of resources that we provided or something that they found, we asked them to identify their chosen resource. And then what is the action step based upon what they learned in that? So first of all, this is twofold. If you found a resource that maybe we didn't have, this was an excellent way to add some additional resources to our bank of resources. But then also the accountability piece of being able to say, this is what I'm going to do, so that when we came back and followed up with it, we could see what progress we made on those areas. So we met in February for the first time with those communities of practice, and then came back again in May and had the final one. And then we asked them to provide us some feedback and reflection. When we came back in May, we asked them to do kind of like their own defense of learning. So they created their own presentation, whatever they wanted that to look like. We didn't give any parameters to that. So we actually had some people who had a poster or an 8.5 by 14 with kind of their information on it. And some did Google sites, Google presentations. So it looked different for different teachers. But then we also sent out a survey to ask for feedback. And these were some of the pieces of feedback that we got. What did you like about the work? And you can kind of see what they said there. We then ask about what changes you would like to see happen. So maybe what did we not do as well? And you can see on that slide, starting earlier in the year, which we knew that we needed to do that. So we were glad that the teachers saw that as well. And then you see some more examples, some more feedback, seeing the competencies at work in classrooms around the district. So that's the feedback from there. And then discuss what role the educator competencies played in your experience. And so this just kind of helped us to get a good judge of whether they truly understood the work and what we were doing with it and why we were doing it. And as you can see, this is just a snapshot that I feel like they really were getting a good idea of why we were doing the work that we were doing. And then for us, our next steps, our July admin meeting, we are going to have our admin kind of reflect on this past year and all the work that they've done in the schools, and what worked well, what were some next steps, what didn't go well, and how could they revise those. So that's going to be in July. And then in August, our LC Innovators will meet, August, September-ish, we'll meet back together to then kind of look at the feedback administrators gave, provide their own feedback, and identify what are our next steps. Because you remember we said we're never really truly there. We keep going and we keep learning and we keep growing. So that'll be their job, is to identify, okay, what is this next year going to look like and where do we want this work to go from here? And then this is just a page, a thank you for you all participating and being in this session. These are some pictures from our district exhibition of learning night that we held in April. As you can see, we had a wide variety of age levels, activities, different student-led businesses or projects that the students were sharing, or passion projects that they wanted to highlight. So it's always great to end a presentation with pictures of kids, right? Because that's why we do what we do. And then I thought I had, let's see. That's it. Thought I had another slide, but that's all I have. So
Thank you, Contessa. There's some questions in the chat. So if you don't mind, we have about 5 minutes, maybe. I know, Roman, you had a question. Maybe we can open it up and you can share some of the feedback on the questions.
okay, so the first one I see is, were the communities of practice at the site level or across the district? We did them across the district. We currently have district PLCs that meet regularly throughout the year, and those are content specific or grade level specific PLCs. And what we just did then was took 2 of those meetings, and instead of having them meet in their content areas or their grade levels, we grouped them by their educator competency. So it was across the district, which gave people an opportunity to see and talk about what it looked like in other schools. And then seeing that the community ranked content mastery as 9th priority, how has that reality shifted priorities, approaches, and structures? What we did was we built that into what we call our empowered learner. So we want, like, empowered learner builds in growth mindset, but also has the academic piece and the content piece there. So we want them to take ownership of that learning, and we built it there. So we do have it there, but the conversation that day, what from the business leaders and the community leaders, were skills that kind of go with the job can be taught. So the content mastery wasn't as important as those soft skills, of those competencies that we identified, being a collaborator, communicator, empowered learner. So we kind of built that academic piece into the empowered learner part.
I guess, Contessa, the gist of my question is a little bit more of, did that shift instructional practices or motivate teachers to want to teach differently? Did it shift the values, or did it shift what you report on your report card? Did it shift, do you know what I mean? Because content mastery is, if for so many years, it's been just assumed that that's the primary purpose of our education system. That's not what your community said. So how did that shift things?
Right. So yeah, we actually have shifted it more towards that relevant and authentic learning. So we do a lot of project-based learning now, and we're building in those academic skills with the projects that the students are doing, but it's not our core focus and our main focus. Same thing goes with our state accountability, our assessment piece. We know it's there. We want our students to do well, but our stress is not on that as much as it is the learning process that happens all throughout the year, and the engagement piece, which changes, we had to change the way we were teaching for students to be engaged.
Yeah.
So that focus did switch.
Contessa, can I interject too? 3 things that I know you're working on that they've also, so the defensive learning became huge, of course, across the district to focus on the skills. Each of the schools highlights the profile of success throughout the school. They celebrate students based on that, not necessarily content mastery or grades or GPAs. There's that broader success. And then Contessa has led the work for the district on their dashboard. So their assessment that's working with the state as well to have assessment measures look different than content mastery. So there's a lot of work kind of in flux as you guys are prototyping what's next.
Yep. And then let's see, I wonder if you're finding that the 9 through 12 span for rubrics is too broad, long, or okay. So the thing that we've really tried to help our teachers understand is that the rubrics are really like success indicators. It's not, it can be broad. And it's okay. It's really just to give them a general idea of what this could look like for a high school student as opposed to an elementary school student. So I think the broad piece, yeah, it is broad. But when you put all of them together, so if you put your 3rd grade, 8th grade, and 12th grade, you can kind of see that the stagger of the what those competencies mean based upon the age level.
Thank you. I know there's so many more questions, and we will share out the recording and share out contact information. But I just want to make sure that we celebrate Contessa and the work of Logan County before we get to talk about Utah. So thank you, Contessa. Thank you for sharing your journey.